In my last video, I outlined 4 common strategies that high-masking autistic women use to hide their autism in everyday life. Today, I'll be breaking down each of those strategies to explore what unmasking looks like in each case. Unmasking is not one thing, it's not a simple thing, it's not an obvious thing, and if you've ever tried it, you'll know it's a lot more difficult than it looks. So today, let's take it step by step to identify what unmasking is even trying to do, avoid common mistakes, and give you a solid path forward for your own journey. Hi everyone, Paul Micallef here from Autism from the Inside. I make weekly videos sharing the human side of autism, so make sure you hit subscribe to get the latest content. So if you've discovered that you're autistic, or you're just starting to come to grips with your own masking behavior, you're probably thinking, what's next? It's a big discovery, there's a lot of work to do. Where do you even start unpacking this? So before I jump into the specifics of each of the 4 strategies, let's quickly look at an overview of what unmasking is even trying to do. Ironically, a big mistake that people make is to think that unmasking means changing your behavior. And don't get me wrong, it sometimes does mean that. But very often, unmasking is more of a mindset shift than it is some big overt shift in external behavior. In other words, when you come out the other end of this journey, you'll likely have changed your behavior in fairly subtle ways that make a really big difference to you, but that others might not necessarily notice or appreciate. The key is to think about, what am I masking? What is my masking behavior trying to hide? Who's it hiding it from? Is it hiding it from myself, or is it hiding it from other people? And what would I do if I were free to express myself? If it was safe to be me, what would I be doing? The second big misunderstanding about masking is that it's a bad thing. A more accurate way to think about it is masking is a coping strategy. If you throw away your coping strategies, you won't cope, unless you replace them with better ones. So with that in mind, the goal of unmasking is not to throw away all of our coping strategies wholesale. It's to first recognize what they're doing, identify the negative consequences, and modify the strategy so it still keeps you safe, but with significantly less of those negative consequences. And that means, as we'll see in a minute, that it's not so much a black and white thing, mask on, mask off. A more helpful question is, how can I slowly show more of myself? How can I slowly be more true to myself in everyday life? Because if I can do that, then in the long term, if I am slightly more authentic from one day to the next, then after some time, I will have unmasked to a significant degree. Okay, so that's a very brief overview of what we're trying to do with these 4 strategies. If you want to hear more about the actual masking part and the strategies themselves, then make sure you check out last week's video. But now let's jump into the 4 ways of unmasking. So the first common masking strategy we often see in women is of being quiet. So the first question to ask about this strategy is, what is this behavior actually masking? In other words, what do we need to unmask here? Some typical things that this type of strategy is good at masking are situations where maybe you don't understand, or you need more processing time, or you feel uncomfortable but don't want to tell anyone. So you might think, if I use being quiet as a masking strategy, then unmasking looks like being less quiet. Except no, not really, or at least not necessarily. If I just do the opposite, talk more, pretend to be confident, then in a way that becomes my new masking strategy. I've given up being quiet and started with a different strategy. I'm still masking, it's just in a different way. So instead, if I ask myself, why am I being quiet? What am I trying to hide? Then unmasking looks like hiding that thing less. If I don't really understand what's going on or need more processing time, then maybe I still don't say anything in the moment, but I can ask someone later. If something's uncomfortable, then instead of leaning on the fact that I never say anything anyway, I can let some of that discomfort show. If I don't want to tell everyone, I can tell a trusted person later. The unmasking process often starts with noticing your own masking behavior. So maybe you could ask yourself, when am I playing this up? I know I'm naturally quiet. I know I'm not naturally very confident. But when do I pretend to be even more quiet and even less confident than I really am? If I notice myself pretending to be even less confident, maybe I could be just a tiny little bit more confident. In other words, to try and share more accurately what's actually going on for me, instead of defaulting to my safe strategy. And by trying to be more true to yourself in the moment, that will inevitably look like being more confident sometimes and being less confident at other times. You're bringing in an authentic variability to the situation. I don't have to be 100% quiet all the time. I can speak up when I feel like it, maybe even have a goal to grow my confidence and communicate that to others. But it definitely does not mean I should try to speak up more or try to be more confident all the time. Think of it as an allowing rather than doing. I'm allowing myself to acknowledge how I feel, and I'm allowing others to see what's really going on for me at the time. Okay, let's move on. The next strategy is the performer-conformer strategy. Masking by putting in a lot of effort to make sure I meet everyone's expectations. So what's this one masking? Well, two main things come to mind for me. Number one, it's masking the effort that it takes to perform at such a high level. And two, it's masking the weakness and vulnerability. I'm pretending to be effortlessly perfect when actually I'm not 100% perfect, and actually it's taking a huge amount of energy. So again, it's not about dropping the mask completely. A good question for this one might be, how can I drop that mask just a tiny bit? How can I start to show how draining it is for me to keep this up? Or maybe there are some ways you can deliberately not be perfect. Is there any tiny little thing that you could do that maybe no one else would notice? Maybe you could put a typo in a text message. Almost like an experiment. How does it feel to say, I've had a big week and could use a break, let's have pizza tonight instead of cooking? Ultimately, unmasking is not so much about others as it is about you reclaiming you. If this is your go-to strategy, you're likely a lot harder on yourself than anyone else is. That kind of change doesn't happen overnight. If you're used to meeting all expectations all the time, it's going to take some practice to get in touch with what it feels like to not meet some of those expectations. And this is where the practice comes in. How can I deliberately, safely do something unexpected? And don't get me wrong, this is incredibly vulnerable, especially in the beginning. Coping strategies protect us from vulnerability. We're trying to make just a tiny little bit of breathing room to change those expectations. This might look like allowing yourself to stim, maybe not even in front of someone, just allowing yourself when you're by yourself to acknowledge that this is a need that you have. Or it might look like just telling someone. I find events with all these people really draining, and when I get home I need to crash. You're not shattering the facade, you're just giving people tiny glimpses and making it easier and easier to show more and more later. Okay, strategy number 3, being cute and helpless. Now, there's nothing wrong with asking for help. Sometimes letting people help you makes them feel good, right? Masking takes one aspect of your personality and grows it to cover up the other aspects of your personality. So in that sense, unmasking is getting rid of the always in the strategy and embracing your shadow, the personality that you know is there, but you'd rather not see and rather not show, so it almost never makes it to the surface. So can you allow yourself to be competent sometimes? How does it feel to say, thanks for the offer, but I got this? Well, if this is your core strategy, that might feel a bit scary, because if you show people that you're confident this time, it might be harder to ask for help next time. The challenge is, can I embrace both of those things? Can I be more authentic when I'm actually competent and I actually don't need help? And can I still be authentic when I don't got this and I really do need help? My partner sent me a meme the other day, a cartoon of this cute little woman saying, I'm a strong, independent woman, but I've also bundled myself up on the couch and I'm really cozy at the moment. So if you could get me a cup of tea and some chocolate, that'd be lovely. Why not both? Can you slowly get more comfortable with both? Both showing and growing your competence when you do got this, and being fully ready to admit when you do need help. Okay, number 4, making excuses. With this one, it's not the excuses themselves which make it masking. It's actually the types of excuses. It's the tendency to use easily acceptable, easily understandable excuses instead of the slightly more complex, slightly more accurate way of describing the situation. It's the difference between saying, sorry, I have to bail on tonight, I'm just wrecked after a big week of work, versus saying, look, I'm sorry, but big social gatherings are really draining for me. I find it really hard to connect with people, and after a full week's worth of work, I just don't have the energy for that. Both are true, but one is simple and easily understandable within social expectations, and the other is more accurate to the real reason that you have to say no. So in this case, your behavior might stay almost the same, but the subtle shift is to slowly explain more of yourself and rely less on prefabricated get out of jail free type excuses. Interestingly, this actually gets easier and easier over time. The first time I say that big gatherings are difficult, I might get some pushback. It wasn't expected. But if I've said that 1 or 2 times to a good friend, they're going to start expecting me to have trouble attending these types of events, which makes it much easier to be honest in the future. It also opens the door to asking for what I really need. Is there any way we could make this event more accessible for me? Can we meet in a house or in a park? Somewhere less crowded and less noisy than a busy restaurant. It allows me to change my messaging from I can't because generic excuse to I could if my support requirements were met. Now that's not going to change much overnight, but simply communicating my support needs gives the people around me, number 1, a chance to understand me better, and number 2, they can do something about it if possible. In other words, if they want to help me attend, I've empowered them with the real reason, my real barrier, and given them the opportunity to help remove it with me. Anyway, there's clearly a lot more we could go into here. Let me quickly sum up the main points before giving you some options of where to from here. So firstly, one of the most powerful questions you can ask yourself in terms of unmasking is, what is it that I am hiding? When I give people this impression using my subtle sleight of hand social magic, what am I deflecting their attention away from? The second thing is that in practice, noticing your own behavior is the first step towards changing anything. You don't need to make any actual changes in the beginning. Even just noticing it, recognizing it, acknowledging it for yourself can make a huge difference as a first step. And finally, unmasking is not a binary process. Masking is a coping mechanism. We want to start slowly sharing just a tiny little bit more of our authentic selves every day, ultimately to reduce the burden of how much I have to carry. Now that's an inherently vulnerable thing, which is why I emphasized safely. And it also doesn't happen overnight. If you're trying to make a change, it might take other people some time to catch up, which means you can expect some resistance in the beginning, but it does get easier over time. Anyway, this has been a very brief overview. I actually have an entire unmasking framework that I run workshops on from time to time. I haven't done one recently because I've been focusing on getting my book published. But if you're interested to hear more on this topic, I've got lots of other videos on different aspects of masking and unmasking. And if you're interested in the online workshop, check out the live events area on the Autism from the Inside website. And if you can't see when the next one is, just send a message through the website and we'll be sure to keep you updated. So I better leave it there. Thanks for watching. Please leave a comment if you can. What's helped you the most in your unmasking journey? I hope you found this discussion helpful, and I will see you again next week. Bye.